Princess Isabel Maria lived in constant agony, a deformity so cruel it stole her chance at a normal life. Behind the palace walls, whispers spread of a family consumed by power, and a secret they tried desperately to hide. It was a cold February night in Madrid. Snow covered the royal palace, and inside, 17-year-old Princess Isabel Maria of Habsburg felt trapped. Her world looked rich and beautiful, but it was a prison. From her window, she watched the gardens disappear under the snow, knowing her own life was just as locked away by duty and the strict rules of the court. Unlike the other young women at court, Isabel carried a heavy burden. A curve in her spine made every step painful. Her gowns, jewels, and tight corsets were not just made for beauty, they were meant to hide her deformity. It was the cost of her family's long tradition of cousins marrying cousins. The Habsburgs gained power, but their bloodline was marked with weakness and deformities that grew worse with each generation. That day, her father, King Philip IV, called for her with urgency. Isabel entered the council chamber, each step heavy with pain and dread. Before the king and his ministers, her fate was sealed. She would marry her cousin, Archduke Leopold Charles of Austria. The marriage would strengthen the Habsburg dynasty, but at a terrible cost. Even Isabel, sheltered as she was, knew the truth. Doctors whispered that the family's constant inbreeding was the reason behind her suffering. She bowed calmly, but inside she was angry. Her twisted spine, her brother's early death, her father's depression, all of it came from the same tradition. And now, the cycle would continue. Her own children might carry the same curse. 3 months later, Leopold Charles arrived in Madrid. He was tall, fair, and cultured, but his face carried the unmistakable Habsburg jaw. When Isabel met his eyes for the first time, she saw something unexpected. Recognition. He too carried the burden of their family's choices. Later, in secret, he admitted what others only whispered. In Vienna, he had studied science. He knew the truth about their bloodline and feared for their children as much as she did. But unlike most, he offered hope. They could seek knowledge, gather physicians, and quietly resist their fate. Their wedding was a grand display of power. Cathedral bells rang, nobles feasted, and the world saw only wealth and glory. But beneath the lace and jewels, Isabel's corset dug painfully into her skin, forcing her to appear flawless. To everyone else, she looked like the perfect princess. Only she knew the cost. That night, in private, Leopold gave her something she had never expected: dignity. He vowed never to see her condition as shameful. Instead, he promised that together, they would stand against the destiny written in their blood. 5 years later, their court in Brussels became something rare. It was not only a seat of power, but a safe haven for knowledge. They welcomed physicians, alchemists, and thinkers who were banned elsewhere. Together, they studied Europe's royal families and found the same patterns again and again: deformities, sickness, infertility. The cause was clear. Inbreeding was weakening the thrones of Europe. The solution was simple, but dangerous: new blood, marriages beyond cousins. But even as knowledge grew, so did the pressure. Isabel and Leopold had no children. Rumors spread quickly. Madrid grew impatient. The dynasty demanded heirs, and without them, people whispered that the marriage was a failure. To fight tradition openly meant exile. To follow it meant condemning future children to the same fate. In the end, their marriage became more than a royal duty. It became a reflection of the Habsburg dynasty itself. Glorious on the outside, but fragile within. Yet from that fragility came resistance. Isabel and Leopold dared to question centuries of tradition. They dared to hope that knowledge could bring change. History does not remember them for their power, but for their quiet defiance. Their story is a warning. Dynasties may rise on power, but they fall when they ignore the truth. For the Habsburgs, the real curse was never their deformities. It was denial.